Sure. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon. It's great to have the opportunity to talk about breeding for longevity, and as Ryan just mentioned, there's a whole bunch of different traits involved, and there's a whole bunch of different people involved, too, and then maybe that's the one aspect that I bring to this conference is as my job as a research director for the Holstein Association. When we get together and talk about the TPI formula and what we want to try to be breeding and how we want to be changing the cows, we get in one room. We have farmers, we have university people, we have AI people, and we all talk about what it is that we want to achieve and how can we go about achieving it, and then how can we feel good when we leave the room. So the first thing you have to do is you have to identify what traits you want to be improving, what needs to be changed in our population or in our cow. And then we try to spend some time looking at the genetic relationships amongst the traits. Lucy had talked about that when she pulled out an individual trait and discussed how it was related to other traits. So we want to get a feel for that and understand how you actually come up with the weights that you would put on traits and how they're going to be changing them in the direction that you want. And I don't know if Bennett's going to be talking about the selection index or how you actually do it from a genetic point of view, but that's part of the process and part of the way that we actually end up at the end result. So one of it is, what do you want to do? How do you want to change the cows, and what really contributes to longevity? This is just one study that I pulled out. This is a USDA Holstein study. It was published last year in Journal of Dairy Science, so it's probably the more recent one. There was 8 million cows that was used in this study, and it had an 18-year time span, so quite a bit. But all of this type of study on longevity and which cows last were really highly dependent upon USDA and for several universities. Those universities would be like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Virginia Tech, Penn State, University of Georgia, and that might be it. And every one of them is having quite a challenge keeping geneticists out at those universities, so that's my plug for more research funding. But what we would do is we would gather up the information and try to present it to people that are going to make decisions on how to formulate different weights on different traits. And at the end of the day, we should come up with something that is improving milk yield, improving fertility, final score being primarily udders and feet and legs, decreasing somatic cell score, and decreasing calving difficulty. Because what the study was telling us is that when we looked at cows that were surviving an extra 1, 2, 3, 4 lactations, when we summarized it, a first lactation cow that compared to the other herd mates, the ones that averaged 1,530 pounds more went on to have at least 2 or 3 or 4 more lactations. So the days open, those cows that got bred earlier tended to last longer. Those cows that had a higher final score, lower somatic cell score, and easier calving. And then we put them on relative emphasis to know about how much emphasis we should be putting on the traits, at least from a starting point, and at least from a phenotypic value. Just to explain the data a little bit more that we would be looking at is when you look on a within-herd basis, those cows that are averaging 1.1 points higher than their herd mates went on for 1 more lactation. Those that were scoring 1.4 on average higher went on for 2 lactations more, and those that were scoring 1.8 higher went on for 3 or more lactations. So it kind of gives you some information to support that final score in general is doing a good job at looking at longevity. It's certainly not the final answer, but it's pointing us in the right direction. And then the hardest part probably to explain to people are those genetic correlations and how if you change one trait, you're changing another. But this is a nice way to look at it. This is a graph of bull PTAs. We have daughter pregnancy rate over here and productive life over here. And this would represent the correlation between those two traits, and it's about 0.5, 0.6. So if you are selecting for a productive life, you're going to be increasing daughter pregnancy rate. If you're selecting for a daughter pregnancy rate, you're going to be increasing productive life. So when you come up with a formula, you're trying to weight those two, and you can kind of steal some weight from this trait and put it over there, knowing that you're not going to be penalizing that trait very much. Key point is, like, the highest productive life bull is also the highest daughter pregnancy rate, and one of the lowest daughter pregnancy rate bull is one of the lowest productive life bulls. So selecting for one moves you in directing of improving the other trait. So in May was the last time that we made a major shift in our TPI formula, and what we did was we looked at what we needed to improve. One of those, the second most important trait up there previously was fertility, and that's not a trait that we were making a lot of emphasis on. So that was the key reason for changing things back in May. We increased daughter pregnancy rate. We did take some weight off of productive life, and we believe that we could do that without hurting productive life because of the high correlation between them. And here's something that just backs up exactly what Lucy was talking about as far as dairy strength, and the graphs that she shows showing that if you get cows that are too far out on the extreme, too angular, too dairy, they start to suffer. So we did take some emphasis off of dairy form, put a slight negative weight there. And we included the traits daughter calving and daughter stillbirths. And if you're adding all these emphasis here, the one thing that had to change was we took a little bit less emphasis on production. So the way I would describe the weights, 47% on production, and then 53% on these primarily health traits, where we'd have 20% on udder health, 19% on early breeding, 8% on mobility, 3% on calving ability, and 3% on body size. We can scroll through these. And then, oh, well, maybe we can't. Works different than I thought. Okay, so at the end of the day, you have to decide whether what you did works. And we try to make sure that we can verify and document that if you use a TPI formula or you use the net merit formula, because they're quite similar and would get you many of these same results. But 97 out of the top 100 bulls on the top 100 list are positive for productive life. If you look at the average productive life of those bulls, it's plus 2.9. You improve both feet and legs and udder composite, plus 1.8. Improvement on production, increased protein, increased fat, and actually increase the components, which is quite desirable. And the other thing is that by using the TPI formula, you get a reduction in somatic cell score, a reduction in calving difficulty, and fewer stillbirths. And it's break even for daughter pregnancy rate. So if anybody would ask, well, what would be the one trait that you may put more emphasis on in the future, it'd probably be this trait right here, because even though it's nice that we're not decreasing fertility, we certainly want to be increasing it more than we currently are. But all of these traits, I think, shows that when you use an index like TPI or net merit, that you're bringing forth a group of bulls that are quite desirable for improving a bunch of traits all at one time, improving longevity, and pointing you in the right direction. And what I tell people is that none of these indexes, whether it be TPI or net merit dollars, none of them are the gospel. So you have to take the number one bull and use him the most, and the number two bull, use him a lot, but a little bit less than the number one. What it does is both of those indexes bring forth a group of bulls that then you can kind of use and decide where you need a little bit additional help. So if you're a breeder that wants to improve daughter pregnancy rate, the way that I would do that is I would look at the TPI, the top 100 TPI bulls or the top 100 net merit bulls, and from that list then pick the bulls that high on daughter pregnancy rate, and then you'll be making improvement in all of those traits, plus more emphasis on daughter pregnancy rate. Well, the same thing for the type traits. If you're interested in type quite a bit, go to the top 100 TPI net merit, and from there then select the top type bulls. And of course, if you have an index, you have to make sure that people accept it and are comfortable with it. So here's, back in May, I just took some of these quotes that came from the press releases, and a number of AI companies said that the TPI formula, they liked the changes that we made because of the improvement for healthy, fertile, long-lasting cattle, the component yield improvement along with overall good conformation and impressive health, and then emphasizing the newest information at that time was this daughter stillbirth. So it was desirable that we recognize that, put that into the formula, and are trying to improve survival rates at calving. And then as far as the farmers, I like this quote here. Jonathan Lamb was a member of our genetic advancement formula, and he gave this talk at Segal, a talk in Mexico, and they wanted him to talk about health traits. And he talked about his breeding program, and the question is, well, where's all the health traits? Where's your emphasis on health traits? And he says, it's in the TPI formula, or it's in the net merit formula. And to me, it's very important, this part here, is that if we have our breed goals identified and we're making improvements in the traits that are related to longevity, and we're doing things correctly, what it does is it allows individual farmers some opportunity to maybe put more emphasis on certain traits and make improvements that they find uniquely valuable for their breeding program.